Parasite Eve feels different. There's an aura to this game that really caught me off guard. Admittedly, I didn't know much of anything going into it, but still, I was surprised. Today we'll break down exactly what makes Parasite Eve so special, and at the very end, we'll rank it against all the other RPGs I've played so far. Welcome to Best RPG Ever. First, we'll talk about the gameplay. There's, not much depth to it, which is fine. Not all RPGs need super complex battle systems. This game leans more into action RPG stuff. You're physically dodging attacks in battle, rather than relying on hit and miss chances. It's almost refreshing. I've played so many RPGs for the channel that are like that. It's nice to be able to put my own mechanical skills to the test. Some of the attacks did feel unfair though. I remember coming across a handful that it felt like I had just no way to realistically dodge. But they usually didn't do that much damage, so it wasn't a huge problem. There's a whole upgrade system you can kinda poke around in, but you don't need to progress. I don't know how I feel about that. I've played a lot of RPGs where there's some side systems you can use to upgrade yourself, but they're completely unnecessary to progress. It kinda feels like a wasted opportunity to make the game more difficult. Encourage the player to go in depth with that stuff. Though maybe it's for the best that it's optional. If you want to make the game a little bit easier, you can put in the effort to do that. It's like summons in Dark Souls. You can make things a bit easier if that's your cup of tea. There's something that's core to early RPGs I don't think I've talked about in this series yet. Something that used to happen all the time in games, and yet it doesn't happen as much now. Can you guess what I'm thinking of? Getting lost. It is so easy to get lost in RPGs that came out, like, before the PlayStation 3. I feel like that's when developers went really hard on waypoints and making directions explicit. But before that, a character might only tell you directions to where you're supposed to go once. Or, God forbid, you need to figure it out yourself. Ooh. I hate to admit it, but I'm a modern gamer. I'm playing games in 2025. I've gotten used to modern conveniences. Games will kinda lose my attention span if they don't tell me exactly where to go. I don't need a waypoint, but I don't like to wander around with only a vague hint. It's been like a month since I finished this game, so I unfortunately can't quite remember specifics, but I definitely did feel lost at points. Directions were sometimes too vague, and I didn't know where in the world to go. As you progress through the story, locations you previously visited remain open. The list of places that could potentially be the right spot to visit increases the more you play. I don't want to harp on it too much, because like I said, I can't remember any specifics. But I felt it enough to write that feeling down in my notes, so I figured I should at least mention it. Something I definitely had problems with, though, is the pre-rendered backgrounds. Don't get me wrong, they're beautiful. They're a large part of why I love this game. But it is genuinely so hard to parse these environments a lot of the time. Sometimes you might not realize there's an exit to another room, or you might not realize that something on a table is interactable. I saw a tweet from Hideki Kamiya recently talking about the environments in the first Resident Evil. He pointed out how they'd use environmental cues to let the player know that a hallway isn't a dead end, it actually wraps around the corner. And this game does that too. In my second tour, I pointed out how I was surprised that there was a room around this corner. But if you look on the ground, you can clearly see light being cast from back there. That's a hint the developers gave you. But sometimes, it feels like they didn't do enough. Beyond just doorways and paths you can take, it's especially annoying with objects you need to find. If you need to interact with a piece of paper on a desk or something, there's nothing to help it stand out from all the other papers in the world. And it super sucks because you have to be in just the right spot to actually activate things. You can't be too far away or facing in the slightly wrong direction, you gotta be right on it. I accidentally skipped over important things because of that. And then at some point, I just started spam interacting with everything, because I didn't have any faith in my perceptive abilities for this game. For as much as I do love pre-rendered backgrounds, they really have a problem with this. I think that's it for the gameplay, which means we will swiftly move to the pacing. This game is paced so well. Granted, it is short, only took me 10 hours or so to beat it, but it feels shorter than that. New environments are constantly thrown at you, and you don't stick with any of them for too long, mostly. Weirdly enough, it almost feels like a movie. There's something about the pacing and the plot of this game that make it feel more like an action movie than a video game. That actually got me curious about whether this came out before or after Metal Gear Solid, since I always assumed it was the first to introduce this style of storytelling to games. But no, Parasite Eve came out some months before Metal Gear Solid. That was surprising to learn. I genuinely could imagine this as an action horror game. Some games I hear people wish for an adaptation of, and I don't think it would really work. They're too sprawling or try and cover too much ground, story-wise. But this, spiritually, feels like a 90s action film. Out of all the games I've played, this one feels the most likely to work in a film adaptation. The pacing just puts me in that mindset. The story. Oh boy, there is a lot going on with the story. The elevator pitch of this game is that you're playing as a police officer, chasing around this mystical creature that can seemingly catch random civilians on fire. Well, at first it might seem mystical, but the game quickly pivots into some hard science. You're gonna get a lot of scientific terminology thrown at you. It's almost hard to follow at points. There's a lot of talk about mitochondria and its relationship to humans, and it's just all weird. It's weird. I couldn't have expected the game to go in that direction. I will say, it's unique. I can't tell if it's stupid though. I genuinely know nothing about mitochondria. Okay, I know one thing, but it's the thing we all know about it. I don't know if the story in this game has even one tiny foot in reality in regards to something like this being possible. Like, can mitochondria think? Regardless, I guess it makes for fun science fiction. This game is actually a sequel to a book also titled Parasite Eve. I didn't know that before playing, but you kinda get the feeling that there's more to this universe than just this game. Occasionally, they reference events that happened in Japan, and that's what happened in the book. I'm kinda curious what it's like. This was a fun enough game to physically play, but I wonder how a plot like this would feel as a written story. Might have to check it out someday. And just kind of a side thing to mention real quick, this game is gruesome at times. The villain's main power is causing people to spontaneously combust. That's a horrifying way to go. Not only do you see people suffer through that in the full motion videos, you come across charred corpses all over this game. They're just straight up dead, and you're looting items from them all the time. Kinda sad. Oh, and yeah, some of these cutscenes are nasty. I feel like I can't even show some of these on YouTube. Look at this disgusting rat transformation. It is so cool. I love stuff like this. Reminds me of The Thing. This game has no shortage of cool creature designs throughout the plot. That's another thing that kept me going. I wanted to see what weird monsters I'd fight next. I guess that's it for the story. It's an enjoyable roller coaster ride to go through. It's not mind-blowingly great or anything, but it's fun, and that suits this game well. The characters. The characters are also fun. They're appropriately tropey. You got the determined cop who's willing to throw themselves into danger to do what's right. The older partner that's always trying to talk sense into them. A crazy scientist. The game doesn't really throw any curveballs when it comes to the roles characters play. But they didn't need to. It's exactly what this story needs. You know me. I love my characters that have a lot of depth. Characters are what draw me to RPGs. I love when a group has such good chemistry that I just love seeing them do whatever. Even mundane interactions can be made enjoyable if the characters have a lot going on. Characters in Parasite Eve do not have a lot going on. Like I said, this is a short game. There isn't a lot of time to really explore all these characters and their relationships to one another. But I almost don't even care. That's not really what I love about this game. What I do love about this game, oh man. Welcome to the final section, the other stuff. This is where we talk about an aspect of the game that didn't quite fit into any of the other sections. What is it about Parasite Eve that I loved so much? I kinda struggle to boil this down to a pithy word or phrase, because what I'm feeling is so nebulous. It's hard to put into words, really. Parasite Eve feels nostalgic. This isn't a game I played as a kid. Hell, I grew up playing the GameCube. I was ignorant to the PlayStation platform and all it had going on up until maybe a decade ago. I got a PlayStation 3 in high school and started playing all kinds of games on that. It was really only when I started this YouTube channel like 4 years ago that I started going back and playing PS1 and 2 games. And yet, despite me only having played Parasite Eve for the first time a month or two ago, this game makes me feel nostalgic. Not even for the game itself, but for the era. I wish I could have grown up playing the Super Nintendo. There are so many industry-defining games for that console. Imagine being used to all those 2D RPGs and platformers, only then to be introduced to the PlayStation. It must have felt like black magic. Specifically in Parasite Eve here, it feels like it makes such a good use of the console. Pre-rendered backgrounds, full motion video, great quality music, this is a whole-ass PlayStation 1 game. And I really want to focus in on the full motion video cutscenes. These are genuinely my favorite part of the game. I am obsessed with early computer-generated imagery, just in general. I love seeing old test animations where people were messing around with 3D modeling software way back in the 90s. Have you guys ever seen The Mind's Eye? It's the first in a series of art films released throughout that decade. They're all up on YouTube. Go watch at least a little bit of one later. This perfectly captures the look I'm in love with in regards to this technology. Back to Parasite Eve. I think I'm drawn to this because of the dichotomy between how simple it looks in retrospect compared to how mind-blowing it was back in the day. Parasite Eve isn't nearly as old as some of the stuff I showed off earlier. It was released in 1998. But it still has that retro feel. These character models aren't lifelike by any stretch, but they're more lifelike than the in-game models. Full motion video cutscenes in games like this are rewards. Like, you play through the more simplistic real-time rendered gameplay, and then after a tough boss, you'll see them explode or something, and it'll dazzle you. That's still rewarding to this day. I can't imagine how insane it must have been back in the 90s. The gap between gameplay fidelity and cutscene fidelity has been closing over the decades. Very few games even do pre-rendered cutscenes these days. Developers mostly lean towards in-engine real-time stuff. Though some games out there still do pre-rendered cutscenes. Kirby Air Riders did it on occasion. That was cool. Parasite Eve has so many of these cutscenes. It feels like it has the highest pre-rendered cutscene to playtime ratio of any game from this period. It doesn't take that long to beat, but there's a lot of these. I cannot imagine how thrilling this game must have been back at release. Nasty creatures, explosions, and all kinds of action. It's a blast. And with that, it's time for the ranking. How does Parasite Eve compare against all the other RPGs I've played for the channel so far? I do like this game, but compared to most of these, it doesn't hold up as well. These are some true heavy hitters. I'm torn between putting it above or below Xenoblade Chronicles X. You know, as weird as it feels to say, I think I like this more. So much of Xenoblade Chronicles X went in one eye and out the other, and while I'm sure I'll forget a lot about this game too as time goes on, I think I'll solidly remember the feeling I had while playing it. Parasite Eve is a thrilling game. It's like an action movie that you can play. And to have that on the PlayStation 1 is an accomplishment in and of itself. This game was definitely ahead of its time. I regret to inform you that my RPG phase on the channel is over. I still love playing the genre, but as I started writing the script for the next video, I realized I was burned the hell out on writing about them. I need to cover other stuff. I'll upload a video to my second channel, Pretzel Unsalted, sometime soon talking more about all this if you want to hear my thought process. And also, I might upload an unscripted video of me talking about the game I was going to cover next. It was Chrono Cross, by the way. Hell, if you want to see some more RPG stuff, go subscribe to that channel. I'm moving on from focusing mainly on RPGs for the main channel, but it could be fun to talk about them in an unscripted format over there as I play RPGs in my free time. I just picked up a ton of them through the holidays. Maybe I could even continue my Best RPG Ever series over there. Sorry to all my RPG lovers in the audience. Again, go subscribe to my second channel if you want to see more coverage of them in the future. If I ever do decide to put together some unscripted videos on them, that's where they'll be. Happy New Year, Pretizens. See you all next time.